All righty. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the June 1st reappraisal committee meeting. Thank you for the folks who are here in person. We've got Miriam currently virtual, and Brenda will be joining virtually. And we're getting some feedback from my PC here. Hang on one second. All right, let's see if that's better. Are we still getting feedback? Yeah.
Should just be able to turn your speaker.
I'm completely muted. Volume turned off, turned down.
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Let me make sure.
Got it.
Okay, there.
Is that better?
Yep, I got it.
Oh.
Thank
I'll
you.
make sure that's on.
All righty, so thank you guys for being here, first and foremost. I think everybody is aware that my esteemed colleague is not here today. Unfortunately, Christina's child tested positive for COVID. So y'all are stuck with me tonight. Long story short, you guys are stuck with me. We've got a pretty full agenda for tonight's meeting. Quickly, just going to run through at a high level. We're going to touch base on the meeting rules. We're going to review our equity questions. Just want to make it clear that there is no public comment planned for tonight's session. And depending on how far we're able to get through our agenda tonight, this may be our final committee meeting. Putting that out there, just putting that out there. So our intent is to review the recommendations that we have so far. We'll provide opportunity for any additional recommendations to be added. We also have a draft presentation for the commissioners that share with you guys, and I stress the word draft. And you also have the overview document as well too. So real quickly before we get going, just to touch base on our ground rules. So everybody's seen these before, but just take a second just to read through those. Want to make sure that we honor the rules that we've established for the meetings. And then also our equity questions. So just to kind of pull us back and get our heads around the equity space. So the questions that we've been leveraging throughout this entire process are: one, who will benefit? Who will be burdened? What are the strategies to mitigate any unintended consequences of this action? And what data sources did you use to evaluate and answer these critical questions? All right, so any questions before we move on? All right, so you guys have a handout in front of you as well, printout of what's being reflected on the screen here. And Christina indicated when she sent out the email with this that we did a little bit of wordsmithing after we left off. Directionally, nothing has changed, but we really felt it was important to make some of these recommendations a little bit more actionable and just provide a little bit more clarity and direction around them. So that's what we did. We added some adjectives, some adverbs, and really tried to make them a little bit more.
So what we got a few days ago, what is on the table is different.
This
with just minor differences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Table is, okay.
Yep. 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 So what I want to do is really just go through each of these, walk everybody through it. There, you can see there's one that we have indication here that we need a little further clarification around exactly what that means. So I just want to walk through this in the intent. So just to kind of familiarize you guys with what's up here. So obviously these were our 5 strategic direction categories that we arrived at. These were the actionable recommendations where we left off at our last session. We then thought it was important just to provide some context, some very directional context, knowing that ultimately these are going to be in front of the commissioners. and wanted to give them some understanding around, okay, if we are gonna move forward with hire a community liaison, what's really the next step? What actions are required to make that happen, right? And then we also wanted to kind of frame up in terms of time to implement what that looks like. So that fourth column on the right was a first pass of just trying to define roughly what the timeline would look like. Now, once again, this is purely intended to be directional. There's a lot more detail. I mean, each one of these really would mandate their own kind of project plan, if you will. So the intent of this is purely directional and to provide context to the commissioners. Everybody clear? We good? Okay, so if we start at the top, right, our first category is develop assessment policies to optimize tax revenue. A little bit of wordsmithing there. We had talked about, I think initially it was like adding new revenue streams or something along those lines. So if you look, Jonathan, you look confused.
Yeah, so it's the verbiage on the far left.
That's
Sorry.
right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. First square on the left-hand side. So underneath that are the actionable recommendations, right? The first one is treat short-term rentals as a business with a progressive tax. Second one is allocate short-term rental revenue to fund homeowner assistance programs. And then the third one is support lobbying efforts to increase revenue streams. The third one, as we were working through this, I from my perspective, if someone was to read that, I think it needs to have a little bit more clarification around it. Was the intent, and I don't remember exactly, if the intent was to say that there would be lobbying efforts needed to support the initiatives above, or is that intended to support other initiatives in terms of identifying these additional revenue streams?
I don't know that I was in the group that came up with that, but I think both of those above items would take some kind of additional legislation to make happen. So I would assume that it dovetails with that, but I don't know that to be
Yeah, that was in our group. I think maybe even my language, and it sort of is the umbrella above those.
Yes, it supports those two.
Yes.
Okay.
Can we look at that first item? I totally fine with it. I just treat short-term rentals as a business with a progressive tax. I think to say treat them as a business, I would think I would rather have something that says just simply taxed at a different rate, or but that's just me. Because then, and I don't know how Keith's office looks at business income for a commercial space. I don't know how they look at that as far as valuation goes. And so I just think that based on that it shouldn't be geared towards business and should be, if we're talking about short-term rental, then
Needs to be differentiated from a multifamily home.
correct. Yes. Or a commercial property. I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be taxed at a different rate. I think we all agreed on that. But the wording maybe sounds a little.
Anybody else feel strongly about that?
Yeah, I think that could definitely be wordsmithed.
Change. Okay, we can do this on the fly.
Yeah. So would it be assessed, or would it be so the first word, I think the first word, and then the business, treat and business
Agreed.
probably are the words that need to be
Agreed.
changed, right?
And everything else we can make happen.
Would it be like establish different tax rate for short-term rentals as compared to single-family homes?
That's right.
Say that again, Debbie, I'm sorry.
We can't change the tax rate.
Well, no, we can't do any of this as it currently
Right.
sits. This is going to take legislation.
Right. Asking me a question.
Yeah, I guess that was, we can't change the tax rate. Is that correct?
Can't change the tax rate.
Can't change.
Not without legislation.
I don't even know. I'm not sure. Kurtz would be the one to comment on this, but I don't know the Constitution really why you do that. It doesn't work in a lot of Constitution as far as how the tax rates for different types of property.
They can be valued differently. They can't be assessed with a different rate. The rate is whatever school district they're in, township, blah, blah, blah.
I think what you're trying to say is that you want to treat short-term rentals as commercial property, where then they could be valued, based on the income approach, the different approaches that be valued differently than short-term than they would be if they're a single family.
To a degree, but I think that the income approach is probably the way to come up with that value. But I just think that it might not be conducive to the way that it's currently worded. Might not be conducive to citizen buy-in or resident buy-in to it. And it's simply about wording, not about the
Concept.
correct. Yes, that's the only thing I'm worried about, because I think we do have to keep that in mind, that we do have to have some kind of resident buy-in.
How about differentiate short-term assessment approach to that of single-family homes?
One more time.
Differentiate short-term assessment approach to that of single-family homes.
The words sound good. What does it look like?
So theoretically, I would say, based on this, I would say that a short-term rental would be, the assessed value would be based on the income rather than the sales comparison approach. So we're going to take into account and this does not, I think also I want to make a distinction that this is not for, I would not want to do this for homestays, because I feel like that there are people in the city and county that use a homestay maybe to pay if husband dies or wife dies and they're using the basement as a short-term rental. I certainly don't want to throw an extra tax bill at that person. So I think a homestay is not inclusive of this. So, but to get back to your point, it would be based on income rather than the sales comparison approach. So currently, all residential properties, no matter if they're short-term, long-term, or primary residence, are all assessed on the sales comparison approach now. Is that semi-correct?
No, because I know you're going to maybe have a little conversation with the committee about the income approach can also produce a less value than the sales comparison.
Sure it can.
Just saying to apply here doesn't mean they're all going to be higher value.
Sure.
So
yeah,
I'm trying.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to, for example, if you were to look at a duplex for a residential real estate appraiser like I am, if you were to look at a duplex in Montford, for example, it may sell like a 2,000 square foot duplex and a 2,000 square foot single family residence. The duplex may have a lower value placed on it based on the income and sales comparison of other duplexes in Montford, for example. So it's not a foolproof way to throw a higher value on a particular property. I would assume Keith's office would have to use the same technique across the board for income producing properties, no matter what they are. And
So not to add to our recommendations, but would there be room for outside of the assessment process to add using lobbying efforts or whatever, to also add a registration or fee process for that to add revenue? I think part of what we're trying to get at is to take the burden off of individuals,
Sure.
homeowners, to spread that spread that around, right?
Right.
So is there opportunity to have a second part of that about short-term rentals? Because this is really all about short-term rentals, this box here, right?
I think what listen, hopefully I'm answering all this correctly, and Keith, you can stop me, or Debbie, you can stop me too. I think that's what Debbie and Keith were talking about, is that constitutionally, and I'm sorry,
Kurt, you look.
Sorry, Kurt. I think what Kurt had mentioned was that a different assessment rate, or I mean, excuse me, a different tax rate is going to be unconstitutional.
So not and a registration would be a tax?
Well, I don't know.
Right.
I don't work in.
No, I mean, just trying to, just to move us forward, are we? I don't
So
know.
maybe it's a one time, maybe that's a recommendation, is that there's a one time or a yearly fee based on, but I don't know if that's the outside of the tax structure.
Right, outside of the tax structure.
But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that. And I'm afraid to start giving.
This is Miriam. Can I say something? I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Miriam.
Talking about this in short-term rentals, and somebody else, maybe Keith or Kurt or somebody, but I know we had some brief conversation about this at some point, but based on state law in the Schroeder case that was in Wilmington, wasn't it ruled that a local government cannot impose a registration requirement on short-term rental operators?
There we go.
It's a question, because I remember because that just happened this year. That was a court case in Wilmington, North Carolina. So can somebody answer that question if I'm remembering correctly?
Is that accurate?
Yes, that case did come down, and I don't know whether it's being appealed to the Supreme Court, but Court of Appeals did rule that you can't basically require a permit on a rental.
I was wondering if that's why in the action column, we went from legislative to county planning, county legal, revenue, blah, 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 to determine the best policy.
Yeah, once again, so in terms of creating that process, policy, whatever we want to refer to it as, right? This would be what we identified as sort of the next steps in that process.
I mean, we can leave the way it is and just rely on. Are we saying to rely on the commissioners and the county as an entity to work on the required legislation?
Yeah. So, I mean, from my perspective, when you look at each of these recommendations, right, these are really very high level concepts to some extent, right? That almost each of these would require some type of project plan that says, okay, who, what, and why, and when. So Debbie, you're going to be the one who is going to work on creating a policy around, this assessment process for here. And we need to talk to these people. We need to talk to these people. These are the milestones. So, I think what you guys are really tasked with is finding those high level recommendations, and then it's up to staff to execute on them, assuming the commissioners say, yep, do this, do this, do this, or they might say do everything. And then it comes back to us to work on developing a project plan in terms of how we get from point A to point B. Does that make sense?
Well, when we stick to the equity question and we talk about short-term lease, and we just look at who does it benefit, and it's a very small segment of the population. And then we look at who does it burden. Well, if we do not tax short-term leases the way that we should as a county, then we burden every single person in Buncombe County. And that's where I'm going to have a problem signing off on.
I'm sorry, I missed that last sentence.
think,
The short-term leases, the way that they're constituted now, you're a homeowner, you pay your assessment for that year. But you can have revenue coming in on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And you're not being taxed for that revenue. That is a loophole that should be closed because it does not benefit the greater community. Am I clear?
And this is Miriam. I don't know that it's a complete loophole because if you do that, I mean, property tax is very different than income tax because you have to report that. So a little, I mean, I guess I just want to be clear that we're not saying that there's no taxation, correct? Because if you take income, you report it to the IRS and you pay tax on that. We're specifying property tax, real property tax, correct?
Right, yeah, so you pay income tax to the state and the Fed, but
Mhm.
the
So it's
local
not a complete
government's not
loophole, I
benefit-
guess is my
Yeah,
point.
That's what, yeah, the local government's not benefiting from any additional tax revenue from that short-term rental.
Correct. Yes. So,
So,
go ahead.
can you read again what you had
Yeah,
up there?
so-
I can't see it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me make it bigger. Yep, no worries. So we can change differentiate to develop, but I think ultimately what you guys are saying here is that the way in which short-term rentals are assessed, it needs to be different to that of single-family homes. Right, good with that? The wording? Yes, ma'am.
Yes and no. Yes on the concept, no on what you've changed into the actions required is, and maybe I'm trying to get down into the process too deep.
Mhm.
But how do you police? I mean, you can't police that. You're in a neighborhood with 50 homes, 48 of them have, family of 3, live there full time, bought the house. 2 of them are short-term rentals.
You're jumping into your solutioning, right? I think that's really what our task is to develop that game plan in terms of how we execute on this.
and I'm gonna harp on this tonight. After reading this, it sort of brought some clarity to me, and I'm gonna harp on it on this bullet point, but I'm also gonna harp on it on another couple of bullet points, is that to make this first one work, there has to be more funding and more staff in the appraisal department in order to make it happen. There's no two ways about it. And so that has to be part of this solution. I don't know if it goes up there but at least 3 of these are all dictated on the amount of funding and the amount of man and woman power in the department.
Yeah.
So
it's all going to take resources to execute on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yep. So just time check. We're half an hour in and we're still hanging up. We're still on. So once again, we're getting kind of down into the solutioning elements of this, and that really, once these are all agreed to and aligned on, that then kind of is going to shift over to our court for all intents and purposes,
Where?
to staff
Oh.
as subject matter experts.
And I guess my thought process is, why do we have it on there if it's not possible?
because I think that was one of the things that the commissioners had said in the first thing was don't let limitation or
Yeah.
things limit our recommendations. If they can't make it happen long term, then they can't make it happen, but we've at least made the recommendation, and if they can't do it, they can't do it. Or if they try and don't succeed, whatever.
So this wordsmithing, I'm wondering, and it may be like, can be teased out, but do we need to have a like bottom line, what we're trying to get at with each of these? So for this one, it would be, we would want to reduce individual homeowners' tax burden or something like that. Is that something that we would want on each of these? Just what are we trying to get at? What was our thinking behind that? Would that be helpful at all to the county commissioners? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
We can certainly add that, yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
Yes, like,
I don't know either.
Well, we're trying to get at the list of charges.
Yeah.
So all of those should be to obtain the charge we were tasked, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, potentially, Melanie, develop assessment policies to optimize tax revenue, kind of sort of should talk to that.
And we're not, yes. And I, as a taxpayer, I don't want that to be like, I'm still gonna pay what I pay and other people are gonna pay more so that the county has more, right? It's that we're trying to reallocate.
Yeah, like that second bullet point, allocate short-term rental revenue to
Yeah.
fund homeowner assistance program.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And if you got what, these are your recommendations, y'all. So I'm happy to do whatever you guys want to do. So if we need to add some other descriptor to this, some other attribute that identifies what it's intended for, we can totally do that. So I'm here to serve. So you guys tell me how you want to proceed. Once again, like, don't lose sight of the fact that these are high-level directional recommendations that you are going to put forward to the commissioners.
The overall agenda for me is to try to bring things into equity that are not equitable right now. And to also reduce the unnecessary burden that we place on people. So if we just stick with short-term rental, and we use Debbie's analogy where we have 50 homes, 48 are living as single-family homes and 2 are living and using it as short-term rentals. That seems to me to not be a fair, equitable system. So I would want to do something to, if these people want to have short-term rentals, that's not the issue. The issue in how you use your home compared to how I use mine, and we're right next to each other. You're benefiting from your home. I'm not.
Right. Yep. So I guess the question for you, Dwayne, is does the way in which that recommendation is worded, does that not address that concern that you have?
He changed it up there, Dwayne. He changed it. Will you read it one more time?
Yeah. So the first one is differentiate short-term rental assessment approach to that of single-family homes.
probably from that, something differentiate from, right? But yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
You okay with that? Melanie, what was your suggestion again? I'm sorry.
Am I right that it should be from instead of to?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Differentiate whatever from single family homes.
Okay, we good on that one? Good to move on to increase capacity in the assessment department?
Could we use, oh, you have that.
Yeah, I just made sort of sports stuff. I'll put something in just kind of, but that's a note for me more than you guys.
So the next two under that one, we did.
So the next strategic kind of bucket, right, is increased capacity in assessment department. And the three recommendations under that are develop a process to correct the percentage of properties with incorrect attributes. So that gets back to the whole discussion around, if someone builds out an attic and it's not permitted, that the data is not up to date. Increased frequency of property reassessments, potentially every 2 to 3 years, and develop key metrics to trigger increase in staff. Do you have any comments or questions around those three?
The only thing I'm going to mention, I said I already said I was going to harp on it, is that literally every single one of these is going to take more funding of the department, and I do like the recommendation of establish a dedicated reappraisal team. That's all they're doing is looking at new values all the time, staying current with what's on the market, what's selling, and that way they're dialed in. And so, but that's going to take a ton of man and woman power. That's not going to happen with the current structure at the department. That's a big lift.
Absolutely. And I think once again, going back to the next step in this process in terms of building out that project plan, so that would be something we identify. Like, okay, we need to hire one of these people, and say, we need to hire 4 more staff, and it's going to cost X per annum. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yep.
Everybody good with this next category? With the increased capacity assessment department.
Let's keep in mind that to increase the frequency, you may have to put more people on staff. But that also will tap down some of the confusion that happens from the 4-year. I think cut it in half, quite frankly. So that's something we should keep in mind also, because the confusion still exists.
Help minimize that sticker shock when
I think something else for us to at least be aware of is that doing assessments more frequently could potentially burden people with a higher tax bill more frequently. So right now we're doing it every 4 years, and let's say that your taxes are $2,000 for the year. Well, guess what? You can count on those taxes being $2,000 a year for the next four years. You start reappraising every 2 years, and everything that I've seen, our property values are going up 15 to 20%. You start handing people a bigger tax bill every 2 years rather than handing somebody a bigger tax bill every 4 years. So just something to think about, especially around the equity piece. And something to think about is that we could potentially be handing folks a bigger tax bill every 2 years rather than a bigger tax bill every 4 years. Just something to think about. Just like the other thing that we talked about with the income approach versus the sales comparison approach.
That's a fair comment.
I agree with you, Jonathan.
The only thing I would also offer up counter to that, but so we're in a bull market right now, right? Well, but if the market does shift to a bear market, right, then it's advantageous.
Totally.
But yes,
and everybody understands what Burnett's getting at there is that if it's not a quickly moving market the way that it is now, let's say in 5 years, and you could potentially see a diminishment value, and you get that every 2 years. But Debbie's been in the business a long time. I've been in the business a long time. I have not seen a lot of values in Asheville going down. So just something to think about, especially around the equity piece.
Maybe on the income approach, but not on the
Right.
sales. Yep,
Yeah,
exactly. There has not been.
yeah, I can't think of a time where we saw a diminishment value. Keith, has your office seen a diminishment value even through the last 2000, 2008 or 10 or whatever?
Management value since then.
No, during that time period.
We did then.
You did.
Yeah, during the
Okay.
recession, we saw some diminishment value, especially high-end homes lost value.
And see, again, sort of talking about that equity piece. If that's what we're here and charged with, essentially what Keith is saying, and I'm going to paraphrase, and Keith, you stop me if I'm incorrect in what you just said, but essentially during the downturn in 2008 to 2010, they did see a diminishment value, most of which, or majority of which, they saw it in the higher value range. And so those people saw their values go down, but people in the lower and mid range, because people still need housing during that time. So they're still going along and still having to buy houses. And so that.
So does anybody have any additional comments, objections to those items that fall under increasing capacity assessment department?
I just will, I will just chime in that I agree with Jonathan on that increasing the reassessments could put a burden on segments of the population for sure.
So let me ask you guys, I mean, is that a recommendation that you want to include in here and put forward, or do we want to strike that from?
So if we're gonna go down this rabbit hole, a slow boil, I think would be much better than a sticker shock every 4 years. And we don't necessarily know that that's gonna be on the incline every 4 years. Just like you said, it could also be a decline. And I think people would be a lot less understanding of a incremental increase as opposed to a slam every 4 years. And when we think about that, who's going to be more burdened by that 4-year slam as opposed to the slow increase? Right? So the people that are going to be overly burdened by the 4-year slam are the very people that I think this panel is supposed to be here to try to protect.
Yeah, and my basic understanding of tax assessments as opposed to the appraisal value is the tax assessment is based on the overall county budget. So it's not necessarily the case that the tax rate would stay the same if the overall value of all the properties go up,
Yes,
So.
very valid points from both of you. So I appreciate that. I agree with both those assessments. So no pun intended.
So no, I don't want that taken out.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
I'm fine with that.
Everybody good with that? Let's leave that one in.
Yes,
Okay.
and don't get mad, but I actually realized that there's something that I thought was one of our recommendations that I don't see up here, and that was the out-of-state homeowners. Is that on here and I've missed it?
South
So
Carolina.
they
Like
got
with
the-
like a second homes, with like South Carolina, and Miriam brought that up last
Yeah.
time.
Well, there's one about the
Is it on?
Florida. Well, there's one about Florida, the homestead exemption. But then in one of these pages, I read when I was reading it when Christina sent this out, it did still have that in here, but I just don't see it in this.
I don't see it in this document either.
Yeah, I will raise my hand and take ownership that I may have omitted that. So if we want to plug that back in here, we can totally do it.
You may
Would
not.
that be in that first grouping?
Yes,
Yes.
that
it would
would
be
fit
that
in there.
first
Yeah, for sure.
grouping, right?
So Melanie, is your recommendation to say something along the lines of, because if I remember correctly, it's something around like if out-of-state owners, like this is a second home, treat that differently than if you're a full-time resident.
So this says, because I did find it in here, so it's on page 9. It says, and so primary versus secondary home or investment, South Carolina model in parentheses.
I apologize. That's all me. I somehow didn't get that.
Burnett, do you want me to type for you?
So I got it. Thank you. All right, so go ahead, John. Read that back to me.
Per this says primary versus secondary home or investment, and in parentheses, SC model, South Carolina model.
So basically what we're saying here is the way in which it kind of goes back to the first one around differentiating short-term rentals. It's the same kind of concept, right? It's differentiating.
Primary versus second.
Yeah, right.
Or second owner.
Right.
I don't know how to say
So
that.
that would really be inclusive of that first bullet point. Could we just take the first bullet point out and just, because the way this reads, it would be investments, short-term rentals, and
Yeah, that's a good point.
Out of
Yeah.
state property and out of state owners.
Yes, and so that could, and maybe in parentheses, say inclusive of Airbnbs.
sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to leave that South Carolina model in there, just because that's a sort of a blueprint, or somebody wanted to look at that.
Short-term rentals, out-of-state owners. Or non-residents.
We don't want it to make it sound like it's a county thing. Or do we?
Say that again.
We want to make it sound like it's a county thing versus a state thing. What if I lived in Raleigh and had a second home in Asheville?
Oh, yeah.
So is it a county or a state?
I would have to,
Non-residential owners, I don't
I
know.
think that-
Residents.
I thought that the terminology was correct to begin with, primary and secondary. If you're primary
secondary
home,
home or investment is what it said, primary versus secondary.
It doesn't matter where you're
Doesn't
at,
matter.
where your primary is. Got it.
The South Carolina model, I'm South Carolina licensed, so let me just clarify. South Carolina model on real property, if it's your primary home, you are taxed at a different rate than if it's investment. So you could have a second home, you could live in North Carolina. Debbie could have a house and it's her primary here in North Carolina. She could have a condo at Myrtle Beach. The way that South Carolina mandates that and the way they do the taxes, it's your driver's license has to reflect the address. So the only way that Debbie could claim her South Carolina condo as a primary and get a tax break on her real property would be for her driver's license to reflect that. So the South Carolina is your primary house versus an investment. It could be an investment, it could be a secondary home. That's the South Carolina model for clarification.
Thank you.
So Burnett, I think the way you've got it written looks good. Thank you for making it bigger for me. Yeah, so how about differentiate short-term rentals? Is it and or secondary homes?
And it kind of changes the meaning of the last 3 words, single family.
Primary. From that a primary resident. I don't know.
I mean, you could say short-term rentals, investment, and or secondary homes. You could throw the investment in
yes.
there.
From that of primary,
Yeah.
Primary residence?
from from that of primary single-family homes. Maybe it should have been 2 sentences.
Almost got it.
Or you could say from that of a single family home used as a primary residence. That way it's clear, we're saying investment, short-term rental investment, second home is different than a primary residence.
Good one.
Winner?
Used as a primary residence. Right?
Oh, sorry. Not quite yet. Does that encapsulate the theme of what we're trying to get across here?
I think so.
See heads nodding. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. So, anybody have anything they want to add to the increased capacity in the assessment department? I think the consensus is to leave the increased frequency of property assessments in here. Let's move on to increased education and outreach. So underneath that, the recommendations are to leverage social media, faith-based organizations, and nonprofits to engage and educate the community. The next one is hire community liaison to provide education on the appraisal process. Do we have any additional comments around those two?
No, my comment's gonna be
Head count.
additional funding.
Right.
Gotta have it.
Any objections to those two? Anything we need to add?
So originally, I had something in there, and it's been skipped down to enhance permitting compliance, but conduct outreach campaign to realtor board and builder association. So I'm still of the mind that I do think that there's enough realtors in Buncombe County that are willing to give their time if there are folks that need assistance with making an appeal or helping pull comps or whatever that looks like, or even just showing folks, you know, how to navigate that process. And so I still think that there's legs on that, and it's got looped around with the Builder Association. But I think I'd mentioned in the past, like I know Pisgah Legal has ask an attorney a question, and you can call into WLOS and ask an attorney a question. I feel like that there should be, we should be able to partner with local realtor organization in order to help answer questions for citizens. And I almost feel like it's a non-threatening way for folks to maybe get some help, and they don't feel like that, even though I know Keith and his department to be nice folks, you know, I think some community members may see it as sort of an adversarial relationship because they don't know the folks but if they've got a third party they can reach out to, it might help out.
So good point. Rebecca, there's somebody, the food out the back door there. So let me just provide a little context on that one. So since our last meeting, we had a conversation, because that was one, I can't remember which group brought that forward, but that was that kind of emerged from the discussion around, we have some challenges, once again, with folks doing stuff to their house and not getting it permitted, and it changes the assessed value. So we subsequently had a conversation with our permit director here in town, in the county. And the idea with that was based on the conversation we had with him around establishing this process to have outreach to realtors and builders to kind of get them on board to be like, hey, we need to make sure that this permitting process takes place. So John, what you suggested is a little bit different. I think what you're kind of saying is implement like a help desk to some extent.
Yeah,
That someone can call in with and say, hey, I'm having a problem understanding my tax bill. Can you help me wrap my head around it?
Yeah, more about if somebody is trying to provide comps to Keith or his team to help folks along in that process, that for somebody that does have access to comparable sales or whatever. So
I think we had that one. I'm looking back at the picture from our board. I didn't remember that being,
it was not lumped together. I think we made
it
that
wasn't
right.
lumped together. Which I'm not saying it's wrong to be lumped together with that, but I think that was the education. And we also had something about, and again, this funding is to, the entrance to the department, that kind of thing. We had that on there somewhere. I'm trying to find it.
Make it more welcoming for folks that are coming into the office. Because you come in that front door and you go up the stairs, or it's just not totally welcoming to the layperson if they were to have it.
Because we kind of had permits out all by itself.
That's right. Yep.
So I think the outreach to, and I think there's probably others, realtors, contractors, etc. But I think that goes in the education. Am I wrong?
Well, I think the builders would still stay under enhanced permitting compliance, because that's who you're going to want to lean on to get them on board with. But I think in the increased education and outreach, something about partnership with the local realtor association, I think would be helpful.
To maybe stand up an ad hoc committee every time there is a reassessment, and to provide a hotline or whatever where people can call and talk to them about doing that.
Sure.
Doing that appeal or whatever.
Yeah, because that's the assistance with the appeal. Is that in here?
I think that's what we have. We want to add that in.
That's what's on the board. That's not in this sheet, I think. Yeah, here, expanded and accessible taxpayer assistance. So I think that's where the lobby update welcoming factor comes into that one. But unless I'm wrong, on this board, we didn't have that under anything or anything under it. So I think that sentence needs to go in there somewhere.
All right. So increase education and outreach. All right. We're going to add another recommendation here.
Partner with local board of realtors.
Partner with realtors.
With local board of realtors.
What are we trying to accomplish with this partnership?
To provide education, to provide assistance/education on
The appeals process or
appeals process. Well, doesn't that, I mean, would we want to do more than appeals process or
Sure,
just the,
yeah.
and process in general?
Appraisal process?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Process?
just my 2 cents, I think that a realtor is not gonna have
Yeah.
appraisal expertise. I think that for me, the idea is if they get a tax bill or a tax assessment that they feel like is out of whack, they have the opportunity to call a realtor or call the board and say, hey, listen, can I sit down with somebody and look at some comparable sales? And they may look at that and say, oh, they're spot on. Or they may look at that and say, no, here's some comps that we can provide
Right.
the appraisal department. And so,
Yeah, the assessment and or appeal process. So they're really not appraising. You can't use the word appraisal or appraiser, but they can talk about assessment.
in the appeal process.
And what you, for the process, what you just said is what the taxpayer is burdened with when they come before the equalization board. Show me why it's wrong.
Right. Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
the idea is you got somebody like, Debbie or I that would say, okay, well, let's look at it together and see, and volunteer.
Partner with local board of realtors to provide assistance, education with the assessment and or appeal process. I like it.
Which the county already provides, if I'm not mistaken. If someone comes in and they're not understanding their tax bill, would your office not try to help them understand what's going on?
Sure.
So we already have that in place. But what we're saying is that there are too many people that are falling through the cracks. So anything that we do that's going to allow more people to be included in the process, to me, that's the way that we want to go.
So are you saying that somebody that might hesitate to go
For
into
whatever
Keith's
reason.
office might not hesitate to call me or Jonathan?
Maybe.
And like I said, I think
that's
it's a
true.
non-adversarial relationship. If they call Keith, well, he, like I said before, I know Keith, I know he's not the big bad wolf, but they may think that because, they got this tax assessment. And so if they've got a third party that they maybe think is, at least the perception is maybe that they could be an advocate to help them out. So.
You provide them advice. The tax office, not the assessor's office. That's really not your job to provide them advice, right? It's not your job to say, oh yeah, your comps are not, let's look up your comps, different comps. Whereas like the board of realtors, they can look up some that, they have that ability.
Sure, but I think Keith's office will sit down with about anybody and show them the comps that they used and the adjustments they made and all that. But again, I think it goes back to perception more than anything.
It also may be, that's levity. It's like getting a regrade, when you're in school, like, oh, they might grade me and I might have a higher
Right.
tax bill than lower. Whereas if you go to, there might be some of that here too.
Which is
Sure.
possible, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so is everybody good with including that? Any objections to including it and or the wording? So partner with local board of realtors to provide assistance / education with the assessment and or appeal process.
And that's under increased education.
That's right.
But we left the Builders Association under permitting.
That's correct.
Got it?
Everybody good with that? Okay.
Should we put partner with local board of realtors and maybe, so an advocate person or advocacy group may also be, because right now everything is still coming from for lack of a better word, business standpoint, government standpoint. And so an advocate in there who may not have Jonathan or Debbie's background still could be very vital as far as getting taxpayers to understand what's going on. So,
Yeah, I think that's what that
it being said,
bullet point up above, leverage social media, faith-based organization and nonprofits to engage and educate the community. And so if you're,
okay, yeah, it's in there.
okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. All right, so moving down, okay, we're good with the education outreach. So we have three actions underneath that. The next one up is to increase and expand homeowners assistance programs. So the two actions that we captured under that one were to provide a homestead exemption, similar to what's in place in Florida, and to reassess limits on exemptions to expand participation.
I have no idea what the
What is
homestead, somebody got to tell me what that is.
So in Florida, if you own a house and you're a full-time resident, you automatically get a $25,000 reduction in the assessed value. I know I distinctly added like Florida, there was recommendations around a homestead exemption. So leveraging Florida as a model, that's how that works, Jonathan, there.
How's that different than the South Carolina? I mean, is the concept the same as what we talked about earlier?
No, it's different in that you, as a resident, automatically get a $25,000 reduction on the assessed value of your house. So it's a different mechanism. So
if you're not a resident, if it's your second home,
you don't get that reduction.
well, so it is sort of getting at the
Yeah, I
same
guess you're
thing.
right. It is kind of in the same vein. Yeah.
I think we talked about it at our table. That I think we were thinking homestead, or maybe not even using that term, that if you had owned your home for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, you get some sort of reduction.
Okay, so that's more along the lines of the longer you own your house, the bigger the benefit you get, or reduction in assessed value. Okay.
I don't know.
No, you're right.
Okay. Yeah, let's change that. I misunderstood it because I thought homestead in my mind was like Florida thing. Okay.
Well, how should we word it?
And then where do you start if you're gonna do it from a ownership standpoint? Do you go 10 years out, 20 years out? Where would you start to give that relief? I don't know.
So once again, let's talk about the concept at a high level, right? So the idea is that the longer you own your house, the bigger of a reduction you would get potentially in the assessed value. In terms of exactly what those numbers would look like, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that would be on county staff to do some analysis to say, hey, look, here's the recommendation in terms of what we would suggest those thresholds would look like. So I don't think it's really you guys, it's not your job to do that. We would need to look at data, we need to analyze it. We would need to do an in-depth analysis to come up with those recommendations.
Is it long-term homeowner relief?
I hate to do this. I'm opposed to that. I think that the first bullet point, I think is the more equitable way to do it, because that's, let's face it, if somebody has a VRBO and they're going to get taxed at a higher rate, or however we want to categorize that, let me tell you something. They're going to pass that along to the end consumer. So they're not necessarily affected by that. The visitor that's coming to their house that's from New York or Connecticut or California is going to pay that tax. Essentially, they're just going to pass that along. In this model, for me, as far as an equity standpoint goes, I think that it I would rather see it done the other way as an investment property rather than this way, because somebody that lives in a $2 million house on a golf course somewhere is still going to be able to take advantage of this.
Well, that would be my next recommendation. We put an income limit on it because we don't want to help those who really do not need help.
That's why I think we just default to that first one. And I'm only one of 8 people on here, and I would personally, I would vote no on that. And this thing can still pass, but I would say no for me for those reasons. But that doesn't mean that it can't stay in there.
And I was thinking about people who have been in their home, you know, the elderly or people who may not already have some sort of exemption, but they've been in their homes a long time and they're seeing, you know, and they have grandkids or kids, and they want to pass it along and just to provide assistance to them. I wasn't thinking of the 2 million.
Yeah.
So let's
So,
define what it
yeah.
is before we vote on it. So provide homestead exemption is exactly the way it was on the board last week. I don't think that was at our table.
Well, we came up with that.
Okay, so is it similar to Florida, or is it how long you've been in your house?
At our table, we talked about how long you've been in, like if it's 10 or 20 years or.
So what we're voting on is should we recommend to provide a homestead exemption, meaning we should give some sort of an exemption the longer you've been in the same piece of property. On the backside of that, and I agree with what you're saying, it's the accumulation of wealth that you're giving to your children or whomever it is. But the opposite of that would be someone that, let's say it's a young couple, and they slowly in their budget, whether it's a $200,000 budget or a $2 million budget, they slowly every 3 years grade up to get that wealth to pass down to their kids. That defeats that. I see what I'm saying?
You lost me.
So we're trying to, if somebody's owned their home, correct me if I'm missaying what this one means. What this is saying is that we should recommend that if someone's owned their home for X number of years, and the longer you've been there, the greater percentage of exemption, so-called exemption that you get. The opposite of that would be, somebody arguing that would be, if you're a young couple, and that's because they're trying to give their kids something when they're gone, so that they don't have to pay that, and that they can keep that home. What if that young family is trying to better every 2 or 3 years, slowly, what that is, and whether it is on a large $2 million house or a $200,000 house, that couple is not staying in their home very long because they are trying to grow up every few years to accumulate that same thing to give their kids.
I think the thought process, the reason we did this was the concern about elderly couple. One of the partners passed away. They're on a fixed income. And we were trying to figure out some kind of way to provide them with some kind of relief. I wasn't really so much concerned with the young people starting out because the young people have an opportunity to work, do other things that the elderly just don't have. And if they've been in that home for 30, 40, 50 years plus, to me, we should be doing everything we can possibly do to relieve their burden.
Agreed. And I think that reassess limits on exemptions to expand participation. I think that for me, I would rather see that ramped up in order to keep those folks in their house. And so for me, I would rather sort of lean on that more than on the homestead exemption, because I think that's got a built-in income, right?
Yeah.
And so I would rather lean heavily on that rather than the homestead. But like I said, I'm only one person on this on this committee, and I can certainly vote no and keep it moving and not worry about it.
Because what you just said is if one of the couple passes away and that one person there is already exemptions in place for income, an age and an income, that's already there. But but you might say it's not
It's
good enough. It's not good. Okay, so
Agreed.
then that would fall into that second sentence. Then
Yeah, to the,
if that's a reasoning behind it, and I agree, then we need to get the education that people don't know that an income at a certain age gets you an exemption, and maybe adjust those exemption levels.
Okay, so what?
So I vote to remove the homestead line.
All right, so let's just do that real quick. Miriam, Brenda, for you guys, virtual, the motion on the floor, if you will, is to remove the one particular recommendation that relates to the homestead exemption.
I
So-
second.
All right, so anybody opposed to removing that?
I'm not.
Miriam?
Yes, I'm in favor of removing it.
All right, so we have a consensus, it seems like.
there we go.
All right, how about that? We will strike that one. All right, I think what I'm hearing then is that everybody is good with that next one around reassessing the limits on exemption.
And can we say eligibility and participation?
Sure.
That's fine.
Expand eligibility.
And participation.
And eligibility, okay. So that reads reassess limits on exemptions to expand eligibility and participation. Can I go with that one?
Y'all are gonna hate me for saying this, but again, this is gonna come down to funding. Keith, do you know how many people, I'm just curious, and you can spout off a roundabout number, it doesn't have to be exact. How many people applied for an exemption after the last reassessment? Or tried to participate in this program?
We typically get as many as 100 a year additional.
100.
And that could be people that are starting to meet the age limit. There's also different reasons that could be.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That for me, that shows that there has to be more funding in more funding in the department in order to get more outreach out there and to let folks know that this is something that you can apply for. So it's going to be important that the funding is there for this in the appraisal division. So again, I know I told everybody I was going to harp on that. I'm going to harp on it again.
But before that happens, that state, state has to change those exemptions.
Right. Yep.
Really? Hold it.
Which, yes.
The state doesn't set that limit, do they? Or the state sets the income limit for that?
The age,
Okay.
like the exemption, if you're X age and have X income, you get. Yes,
So,
that's-
all right.
that's
Yeah,
legislative.
okay. Thank you. I did not know that.
Okay.
So that goes back to the lobbying thing where there has to be.
You want to change this sentence?
No, and now I'm going back to if it takes an act of North Carolina, act of the state to make that change.
Same thing for the homestead.
Yeah. So same thing for any way so everything.
That's what it sounds like. And I didn't know that till Debbie. Thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for clarifying that.
Additional information for you on that is the income's probably the bigger barrier than the education. Because the income disqualifies so.
Right.
Right, so many people will apply or call or whatever about it, and it's their income.
Yep, and again, we weren't tasked with, the task was no matter where what it's gonna take to change this, we need to make that that recommendation has to be made. And that for me is one of the bigger pieces to this, so.
Well, we don't run away just because it may be different.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's why we're here.
Yeah, and I was just saying the staffing, but state, then staffing and funding and staff.
Totally right, like, gotta put the cart or the horse before the cart. Yep.
Yes, I think everybody's good with that. Any objections? Reassess limits on exemptions to expand eligibility and participation. Okay, so the last one we haven't touched on yet, so we changed this one, the conduct outreach campaign to Builders Association. The last remaining item is around the permitting process. And once again, this is based on the conversation that we had with our permit director here in the county, was establishing an internal process for communication between assessment and permits, right? So to make sure that when permits are filed or pulled, that there's dialogue going back and forth between the two departments to ensure that there's a flow of data taking place, in particular as it relates to updating attributes on the properties. And I know that Keith has indicated that that's already a motion that you guys are working on establishing that process now.
Establish or enhance?
Enhance.
Yeah, because it is,
Sorry.
so it is there is an internal process. So I think we should take that established word out of there.
So change to enhance.
Oh, I could pull up my thesaurus.
I'm glad you took that picture.
All right, so we have worked through all of the recommendations that currently have. So I think we're at a good spot to take a break. What I want you guys to do is go get some food. Let's take a break for until 6:35. Come back in, and anything pops into your head while you're eating dinner, any additional items that we want to offer up for conversation, we'll provide some time to have that additional dialogue around any additional recommendations that you all feel you want to put forward.
I'll throw something out that everybody can think about real quick. Is that so I know the appraisal department has access to the MLS, and historically over the last year or so, we're seeing about 50 homes hit the market each week in Buncombe County. Let's say 50 to 100 homes. Would it be advantageous to add staff and to look at the new houses that are hitting the market every week versus the data that we have in the database for the appraisal department? And if those don't match up, to have some kind of system where we're going to the folks before they transfer, before the house gets transferred to a new owner, and you sort of head that off, because I know Keith had talked about and I don't remember the verbiage, I've got it written down, there is like a look back something, but that would, I think we had talked about, that would apply to the next owner. And if you had that off before, like if it hits the market and you compare the two, you're like, wait a second, there's 1,000 more square feet here, and you get ahead of that, then you could do something before it closes, if that means some kind of tax lien on the property before. And so that's a ton of work.
That's kind of sort of what we were trying to get at with conducting the outreach campaign to when we had the Realtors Association in there as well too. It wasn't clearly communicated, but yeah, that we kind of sort of were kind of alluding to the fact that we had that conversation around permitting, and particularly when, you know, you discover that, hey, there's now 500 square feet that was never permitted, that liability falls on the new owner, not the previous owner that did the work. So I think what you're saying is trying to, like, before that sales transaction closes, let the new owner be aware of the fact that, hey, by the way, you could be on the hook for this
And you
increase.
collect the tax at closing. If
closing.
I mean, it's on their settlement statement. But that is a ton of work in a huge undertaking. And you talk about man and woman power. Now,
And it can
start
work.
looking at the,
Works.
totally agree.
When it goes back to that broker, when it goes back to that seller,
All we're literally saying is the documentation that's coming from the seller needs to match the numbers in the assessor's office. And if those numbers don't match, whether the homeowner took advantage or not really isn't the question. Those numbers don't match. That homeowner has been benefiting by adding that 1,000 square foot and not paying taxes on it. So when it's time for them to sell, at closing, the assessor's office should get involved, and these numbers should match up, and they need to pay the taxes that they did not pay because the
Right.
numbers were out of line.
And I think there's a tolerance, sorry, Melanie, I think there has to be a tolerance there. So, you know, if it's 10% more than, or whatever that is, then, okay, you know, that might have been a measuring error on the county's part or the realtor's part, or there's a tolerance there. But if there's, you know,
Second floor added.
right, something, right, exactly. So I think that's a huge undertaking. I just want to, but you know, it can be done. Just how much money do you want to throw at it? And I think Burnett even said it earlier. How much, you know, it is the juice worth the squeeze, and that would be a county question. So
What I was gonna say is, does the broker or the real estate agent look at the tax value when they are listing the house?
Sure.
So they see so is the tax value, and then I know I'm getting confused. So do they see that it's based on 2,000 square foot and they're getting 3,000 square foot? Or do they just see a bottom line number?
we talked about that the other week. They will see the tax value when they're coming up, which doesn't always necessarily mean that's the value they're gonna come up with to put the home on the market with. But if they measured 2,000, or they measured 3,000, and the tax office said, if they measured 3,000 and the tax office said 2,000, then yeah, that broker should say, well, Mr. Seller, we're, you know, it kind of looks like your upstairs is newer. You think that's the 1,000 square feet difference, and then that should come out of it.
So the language that you had originally with that realtors may be appropriate. Having some sort of outreach when a house is listed, that is the realtors who will know that information. But I don't know how that is
I mean,
managed. I'm just saying.
yeah, try to get a realtor to you know, to unprompted to call Keith and say, hey, Keith, I think we've got a not happen. I mean, I'm just being honest here.
So what would make it happen?
It would be an enforcement issue on the county. It would be a county lift.
So what if we change that to say something like, conduct outreach campaign to realtors and builders association to ensure accurate property attributes? That's kind of what I think, that's sort of what I'm hearing, the crux of this conversation is that, hey, we need to make sure that if someone has a 2,000 square foot house, that they've reported any upgrades and they're getting taxed properly based on what those potential upgrades may have been.
Yes. So the question is, how can discovery be made? one-way discovery is made is a flyover and you've got that footprint, and the new flyover shows an extra wing on that footprint that's not on the original one. That's discovery, right? So how else could we discover?
So once again, I think that's up to our team to try and figure that out. But if,
Am I digging too far?
no, it's okay. No, it's all good. It's all good. But you know, if the recommendation is that, hey, you guys feel strongly that that gap needs to be closed in terms of, you know, this unpermitted upgrades to houses, then let's put that recommendation forward.
I think an absolute strong, good, best attempt. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because yes, if somebody's been benefiting for that extra wing or the extra 1,000 square foot or the 5th bathroom,
Right.
they should have been paying taxes on it.
And we should have a way to recoup that money, because that benefits everyone in Buncombe County. And so we also have to advocate for all of the citizens of Buncombe County.
So you guys okay with the way in which is worded around conducting an outreach campaign to realtors and builders association to ensure accurate property attributes? Debbie, you can't see that.
Oh,
Better?
property what? Oh, attributes.
Attributes.
I like that.
Characteristics.
Attributes.
Description.
I mean, I like attributes.
Attributes.
All right, time check, y'all. 6:30.
We're done?
Not yet. Wishful thinking. Why don't you guys, let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back together at 20 till, and we've got some more fun planned for the next 20 minutes. Thank you, guys. This is a good session. I know you guys are churning through this, so making good headway. Brenda and Miriam. Brenda, Miriam, we're taking a 10-minute break.
Can we bring you anything?
So am I.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you. Good work.
Where's Bobette?
Bobette had to travel.
mean, I just told somebody today. I walked into-
Hi, Brenda.
I walked into a 15-year
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm coming from the Isle of Palm, South Carolina.
Oh, look
So-
at you.
I know, right? It was cloudy for a long time, so the sun's out. I got friends heading down, and
Very nice.
yeah.
Well, thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wouldn't miss this last day.
Yeah, we get conditions because when I bought my first house in 80,
It's probably like 13%.
the interest rate, I had A1 credit, I got 8.9%, and that was the best I could do.
How much was it? I'm sorry.
8.9,
Yeah,
and that was the best I could do.
yeah.
So
We're still historically low if you look at it over. Yeah.
But it'll go up again twice this year.
Yeah, I mean, but people get used to it. They're like, oh my God, they think the sky's falling, but it's like
Right.
historically, it's still pretty
They're
doggone
just
low.
not doing all the refinancing.
Right.
All right, we ready to bring it back here, folks?
I have a conversation.
Well, we have work to attend to.
We're kind of busy here.
Okay, all right.
I have to go wash this garlic off my hand.
Okay, so real quick, where we left off, right? The last one, you were on conducting outreach. I think I heard someone mention like there was an enforcement element to that last item we were discussing. Around kind of like the communication, ensure accurate property attributes.
So for me, I don't see that as being a ton of work, and that's such a loophole that we just should not allow to exist. So however it needs to be enforced, whether it's at a closing or where the assessor's office gets involved before property can change hands. I mean, there's ways. I don't think the assessor's office has to go out and reevaluate. The market has already done that evaluation for you. The realtors has placed it on the market. They're going to place it on the market based on the description of the house, right? You can't have a $2,000. You can't have $200,000 property. And can you put it on the market for $100,000, or do you have to be within the guidelines of?
No, you can put it on for whatever you want.
It just won't sell.
Correct.
Okay.
Or it might sell in less than a day because you put it on so low for you.
Yeah, I do want the opposite
But
way to do it.
When she asked me if, for us, if when something goes on the market, do we first look at tax values and the tax card per se, all of the tax card items? The answer is yeah. I mean, I do, but that's not how I list it. I don't take that tax card and fill my listing agreement out of being 4 bedrooms, blah, blah, blah. I go measure the property. It's a lot easier for me to measure a warehouse than it is for him to measure a house. But so we measure that property. Then if we see that something's different, then yeah, we would try and address it with the seller. But that we don't take the stuff off the tax records.
That you would notice.
You would notice, but
Sure.
not necessarily it would.
Good realtors would notice.
Yes.
All right, folks, so we have spent roughly the past hour and a half plus working through the recommendations. We've kind of, I think, throughout this process, we've taken a vote to eliminate one. We've had a couple different ones added. So we're kind of at a point now where we're at this speak now or hold your peace point. So does anybody have any additional recommendations that they would like to add to the list that we currently have? Except for Jonathan. Just kidding.
I have to look at my picture.
The only thing I'll say is, I do think that, so that's a different task, that last item. conduct outreach campaign to realtors and builder association. I think that those don't necessarily go together. The reason I say that is that I think there is a way for Keith's team to partner with realtors in order to pull new listing data, but I don't know that involves outreach with them, so to speak. And it's not really, and then they would be able to do their analysis based on that. So I don't know. I think for clarity, it might be better to have those things separate. But that's just, again, I'm just one person on this committee.
Or instead, I get the home builders because they want, if somebody comes in and says, I want an extra wing on my home, then the builder should be the one that says, oh, we're going to permit that. And then the permit triggers, going down. But I think what I heard you say a minute ago is the realtor issue. When you added that to that, you were thinking more of the MLS stuff. So Keith uses more than MLS. So what is the word that would encompass, excuse me, MLS, CoStar, LoopNet, Catalyst?
Data sources.
Ah, there you go. Data source.
Okay, so talk to me about how we want to state this. Do we want to change that from outreach campaign to reconcile data sources to?
I think it's two sentences, 2 bullets. Conduct outreach campaign.
Yep.
Or obtain buy-in to the Builders Association. Maybe that's not exactly it. They know what they're doing. So it would be conduct outreach campaign to Builders Association, but also to.
I think you just take out realtors in that. Can't we just say conduct outreach campaign to Builders Association to ensure accurate property attributes? Or we're talking more about buy-in. I know you mentioned the word buy-in.
Well, I mean, that's what we're asking the builders to do, is to kind of do the right thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But if we call the Builders Association and say, hey, we want you to start doing the right thing, that's insulting. But what I was getting at is, how do we partner more with the data sources?
Partner with realtors and home builders to reconcile property attributes? Is it a reconciliation? No?
No, because we're getting the builders to continue their compliance and telling them before they take a job, they've got to get a permit, versus what Keith does to reconcile that it's a 2,000 square feet, it's 2,000 square feet. Like if it is a office building, he's going to look at CoStar. If it's a home, he's going to look at MLS. So what we were talking about a minute ago, I think, was to keep the realtors in there so that somehow that expansion or whatever happened, whether it was an extra office added on to an office complex, that the data source gets done prior to the instead of saying, okay, it closed, and now we see it has an extra bedroom, is to somehow back into that. And when the office building or the shopping center gets on the market. Yeah. Did you get that?
So are you saying, I didn't get it, because I want to know, are you saying, because he had said delete the realtor's part, is that just putting that into a second bullet? So there's 2
data
bullets.
source, or I think what we talked about was data source on that. So yeah, second bullet point would be utilize multiple data sources in order to ensure compliance. Yeah.
How about something like maybe I liked partner or work with realtors and builder associations to ensure accurate property attributes, because that's really, once again, keeping this at 10,000 feet, right? That's the gist of what I think you guys are getting at, is that there's there's Debbie, to your point, asking to do the right thing is one sort of element to that, but then also to your point, the data piece of it's another piece of that, that once again, we would then work, we being staff would work to build out a project plan in terms of how we're going to execute on that to get from point A to point B.
Okay, so instead of realtors, can we use real estate professionals then? Because, and I don't know if you are or not, but there are some commercial agents that aren't realtors.
I am, but there's a lot of commercial agents that are not realtors. I am.
Right.
Since I have ethics.
So does this work for you guys? Partner with real estate professionals and builders association to ensure accurate property attributes. Ultimately, we want to enforce that.
What's in parentheses?
Requires enforcement.
Yeah.
Good? Yes. All right. We've got recommendations. Everybody feeling good? Yeah? Brenda, you nodding your head? Thumbs up? Okay. Excellent. Miriam, you still with us?
I think she popped off. I'm not sure if she had problems or just popped off.
All right, so we've got a few minutes left. We had hoped to talk about the presentation to the commissioners in terms of taking these recommendations and that process for how that is communicated to the board. But before we do that, I'm going to turn the stage over to our assistant county manager, Ms. Sybil Tate.
Yeah, so as Burnett's pulling up information about the presentation, I wanted to share with you, one of the things I do in my role is to work with department heads as they're giving presentations. And one of the things we always do is try to anticipate questions that the commissioners might ask as part of the presentation. And so I want to share with you not to, push you, in this direction, but I do want to make you aware. I think one of the questions may be about the Urban 3 report. And so I just want to make you aware that as you're working through your presentation, just be thinking about if you get a question about that, how you might respond. Again, I'm not pressuring you in any way, one way or the other, but just think about that. And then the other question I was thinking that may come up is about data, and if there's any other data that would be helpful or useful in helping you all make a decision. So I just wanted to share those two things with you. And as you're going through this presentation process, just be trying to think about, and I'll jump up if anything comes to mind, but what questions the commissioners might be asking you.
And specifically, what made, in your purview, but I'm just curious, because I can't imagine that there would be outstanding questions about, are we talking specifically about the Urban 3 study?
Well, I think just some of the questions that arose, as the reappraisal was being done, and part of the questions that, really were the impetus for this ad hoc committee being formed. So I would just be prepared for a question around, were the concerns from the Urban 3 report, addressed, or were you able to respond to those? Or if you don't, then that's up to you. I'm not making a judgment on that. I'm just saying that may be a question. So.
Yeah, and I don't think that was into, our sort of ground rules and tasks were laid out in, Urban 3. To my knowledge, that was not really a task that we were. And so is it fair to be able to say that to the commissioners that, hey, listen, that was not for me, that was not something, and maybe I'm the only one that thinks this, but that wasn't really a task for us to differentiate between the Urban 3 study or Tom DeVete study or what and so I didn't really, I just hope we can be honest.
Yes, absolutely. And if that's your answer collectively, then that's your answer.
I think we had a really good conversation about that last time about the adjustment of values, and that to me, I think, is really the crux of the difference. And I do think that that needs to be, it would be my opinion that that would need to be, getting into the weeds a little bit, that would need to be addressed in some way to the county commissioners.
So, my observation with Urban 3 is that Joe, Maury, and Keith, when the data was new, they all agreed. All the information they agreed with. Where they have disagreements is when we get out a year past the assessment, 2 years past the assessment, 3 years past the assessment. That's where the confusion comes in. And so for me, if we can simplify that process, I found Urban 3's information to be credible. I appreciated it. Glad to have it, because this committee was formed because there are some inequities in the system, and we know that. So then we should be trying to address those inequities that we see. And so if we don't have the data, we can't make those assessments. I'm not concerned that the Steve-O, is that the name of the first study? Yeah, yeah. The fact that their two, the information seemed to be so different, that doesn't bother me. And I think everybody on this committee was able to differentiate what was going on and where to take. For me, I kind of isolate on the, just like what the board says, who does it benefit, who does it burden? So we have to have the data to be able to make those conclusions. And so as far as I'm concerned, all of the reports were necessary for us to come to the process that we are at right now. Without trying to point fingers and say one was better than the other, that's not my role. And that's not what I'm here to do.
Sure.
And I think that that's where those recommendations about reconciling the attributes that for me that goes right into the differences between those two reports. So I think that we need to get into the weeds in some way on those recommendations to say that this was directly in response to the data sets that we were provided from the two different reports.
So help me understand that when you say get into the weeds on the recommendations.
So, well, we were talking about 10,000 foot level, but I think that the county commissioners may want to know, okay, so we received this presentation from Urban 3 that said this, and this said that. What did you find out? And I think that that's a hard thing to explain at the 10,000 foot level.
You're absolutely right. It's a very nuanced conversation that there's multiple aspects to that. Dwayne, let me just thank you for what you said, and just so to share with you guys for what I see my and Christina's role as facilitators and our planning team for this committee was that it was our mission to bring you guys education, right? To bring different perspectives. If you think about all the folks that presented to you guys, ranging from the first series of presentations with Keith Boone and Chris McLaughlin, to Dr. Mullen, to Urban 3, to Tom Tavit, the idea was to present you guys with information and knowledge that would help facilitate the process that we work through around the construct of these recommendations that you guys want to put forward. And in theory, that education and learning and hearing from public comment, the survey that was taking place, provides you with understanding around community concerns. And in theory, the recommendations that you guys are putting forward takes all that and kind of boils it, and it should be all inclusive into that parts and pieces. The challenge, just to put it out there, right? So we're talking about the presentation to the commission. So we're going to have you guys have roughly 15 minutes to make that presentation. And that presentation, in theory, if we have time, I can walk you through what our thoughts were around what that would look like. At a very high level, that would, it would kind of, provide some context for them in terms of the process that's taken place, who are the speakers that we heard from, how have the resolution items been addressed with the recommendations you guys are putting forward, and then sharing with them the specific recommendations. That conversation in terms of trying to reconcile the differences between what the assessment staff has calculated and what Urban 3 has calculated and Tom Tavit has calculated from a sales ratio perspective, I don't know how we would have time in that 15-minute window to address it in that form.
I think that's fair, but I think that we could say we did dive into these, to the data, and
Absolutely.
this is the conclusion that we think will address the differences between the data sets.
Yes. If that makes sense to everybody, that's absolutely a way to address that.
I mean, I think we all reconcile those things and process those things much differently based on our background and understanding. And so my reconciliation may look different than Debbie's and may look different than yours and yours, Dwayne. And so I think I'm with Burnett. I think the recommendations from the committee sort of sum up where we are, but I don't know, because I certainly wouldn't want to answer a question from a councilman or woman that asks a specific question around that, because my reconciliation is going to be totally different than somebody else's on the committee, and our body of work sort of speaks for itself as far as how we reconciled it as a group. But I think for one person to comment on that is potentially going to get your perspective and your perspective and your perspective wrong.
That's right.
That's just my perspective. I wouldn't want to do it. I would actually not want to present if I was asked to, because I wouldn't want to mischaracterize how you interpreted the different studies, because we all probably have different perspectives, and that's why we're all here, is because we do all have different perspectives and different educations and all that sort of stuff. So
are you saying the whole committee is going to present this to the commissioners?
So we are 10 minutes over our scheduled time. Okay. So before we dive into that, let me provide you a little background before we go down this path. So tentatively, what we had talked about internally from staff perspective is presenting at the June 21st commissioner meeting. So the commission meets every 2 weeks. So the idea would be that we would take the recommendations that you guys have developed tonight, and the committee, members of the committee would present to the commission. These are your recommendations. I don't really feel like I should be the one presenting your recommendations to the committee. Christina does not feel that way either. So the suggestion would be that you all would present this to the commissioners. Now, I've taken a pass at developing presentation to share with you guys. And once again, this is my pass of just putting something out there for you all to react to. So with that in mind, we can, if you guys have time, and if we want to try and land on this June 21st meeting, we can work through this presentation, share with you the content, and align on the methodology for presenting to the commissioners. If we don't want, if you guys can't stay, and I totally understand that, we're probably going to need to have another session just to work through this. So,
Okay, one other question, because
Yeah.
the question I was going to ask was, you had said be prepared for potential questions, and also that the question would be, do you feel that we, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, so you can correct me, do we feel that we heard or gave attention to or something to Urban 3?
Address some of the concerns that they brought up, the way I phrased it.
Okay, not the differences, but their concerns. Okay. Because I think one night we voted not to hear them, and then we get to the next meeting and Urban 3 is the presenter. So I feel like we did above and beyond what we, were put here to do. I'm out of town that week, so y'all decide.
I think I am too.
That 21st?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I'm really not kidding. I'll leave the 17th.
So question is, guys, do we want to hang out for a little bit longer and go through the presentation, the draft presentation that was developed in an effort to hit that June 21st date in terms of presenting to the commissioners? Or do we want to just pause right now and reconvene? We probably wouldn't need a full 2-hour session to get through what's left, but we will need, I think you guys need to see this presentation. You need to agree this is the content that you want to put forward. So there is a little bit more work we need to do. So I'll leave it up to you guys in terms of how we want to move forward. So it's a question of stay a little longer tonight or get back together again sometime in the future, roughly probably within the next 2 weeks to.
It's not a choice 3.
I'm not shy about speaking up. So, in light of the fact that there's only four people in person and Brenda on the call, I would love to get this knocked out tonight and put a nail in the coffin, so to speak. And I'd love to hear from everybody else, but I do value Miss Bobette's input, Brenda's input. While I know she's virtual, but it's not the same. Miriam, Ori's gone now as well, and so I value everybody's opinion, and so especially when we're talking about the final presentation. But I'm totally willing to plow forward, and because I would love nothing more than to wrap this bad boy up. So
I'm going to suggest we meet again. I'm sorry, Burnett, to do that, but I think I'd like to be there. Yeah, I'd like to be there in the room, and I think, Ms. Bobette would too, and any other persons that had to leave. That way it could be a full group decision. We have a few people out of town, so whoever's got to make the presentation, I think you need to look them in the eye and tell them that they're the person.
Brenda, you're that person.
Don't you do that to me, man. I'm on vacation. But I would like a little bit more time. And then if, can it be more? It just has to be one person.
So we can talk through that. I mean, I haven't shared it with you, but our initial thoughts is that there would be a handful of folks presenting from the committee.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be just one person.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, so we have one vote to have a follow-up session.
If it's in 2 weeks, I'll be out of town for work, but I can try to join remotely.
That would be the 15th.
if we do it the 15th, there's no way we'll be ready for the 21st. Right?
No, that's not gonna
No.
So we'd have to move that date back.
Or meet next
We'd
week.
have to meet, are you saying move the,
We won't make that the commissioner meeting the 21st.
we go to July's commission?
The first meeting in July is canceled. It likely won't happen. It's the 5th, the day after the 4th, so we would probably aim for the 19th. So
The
July.
commissioners meeting.
Aim for what?
July 19th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
For the presentation,
Okay.
not for
Yeah.
our meeting.
Right.
So that would give us a little breathing room to have another meeting after everybody gets back out of town. Right?
I don't know, that's really stretching it out. Can we meet next week and be ready for the 21st?
We could do that. That's an option too. we want to meet next week, we can do that.
The sooner we meet, I think the better.
Okay.
Because we're gonna get into graduation and all that stuff, and I won't be available.
Got it.
Yeah, we're already in all sorts of that.
We're already on the one, so.
So we'll keep me in check here date wise. I think the presentation, for the review session, the 10th is the deadline for that.
So
June 10th.
if your goal is to present to the commissioners on the 19th of July, then we.
The July
Still
20,
even
the June 21st session.
Oh, yes, it would be the 10th. That's correct.
Okay, so internally, just so you guys know, internally, there's a
Right.
review that takes place for all the content that the commissioners are going to see. So there's a review meeting or a deadline to have that submitted by the 10th. So we would have to, if we met a week from now, that would be the 8th. So in theory, we were able to finalize the presentation. We could hand that off for the 10th and be ready to rock and roll.
Neither Kurt nor I will be able to be here on the 21st.
Okay.
Kurt and I have a mediation in Raleigh, so there's no way that I can change that. So I'm sorry. That's,
Okay. So
We're gonna need more chocolate.
so looks like my better day.
Well, but I mean.
That's my straight. Probably not.
okay.
But
What's the question?
Would
I'm
you-
sorry, I couldn't hear.
I think Keith needs to be at the commissioners meeting. Is that what you just said?
So then that pushes it back to July 19th.
I mean, trust me, I'm like what Jonathan just said. I want to be done. I would like this over. And I do not want to push it up. Do I want to push it into July? Do I feel stronger that we need Keith and legal at the ones who have been here since last September or longer, that's been through this, to be in the meeting? I think that feeling for me is stronger than drawing it out another month. Did I say that right?
No, are you saying that you would rather do it in July when Keith and Kurt can be there?
Even though I don't want to draw it out, I would rather Keith and Kurt be at the meeting.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too.
Sorry, guys.
There it is.
All
So
right.
can we
we're
meet in
targeting-
3 weeks?
So sorry, Brenda, say that again.
It sounds like people will be gone in 2 weeks. Can we meet in 3 weeks, which would be the 22nd?
Well then, so if we go to the July meeting, what day does the info need to be in for review?
So we have to have it at 8.
The 8th of July?
Yeah, so that's way in.
So I'm gonna throw, I don't think this is a major showstopper, but I will not be at the agenda review that week because I will be at the beach.
Good for you.
So hopefully somebody from our team can take the lead on that.
What week?
Yeah, that doesn't concern you guys, but.
Yeah, we got that.
A meeting or the brief? Going to the meeting?
I'm not sure yet. Probably the regular meeting.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing, guys, keep me in check here, is that we're gonna target the July 19th commissioner meeting. We need one more session between now and then to lock in on the presentation. Brenda, I'm hearing you say that you're not gonna be available in 2 weeks. Why don't we do-
No.
Sorry.
Other people can't be available in 2
Said I
weeks.
wasn't.
I
You
can be
can't be.
available in 2 weeks.
Got it.
Right.
Are you able to participate virtually?
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't schedule, because I'll be presenting as well.
Got it.
May work.
So why don't we do this?
We can work outside.
What?
What?
Let's do this. I'll send out a poll to the committee to see what available, because we've got some wiggle room between now and the 19th. So let me send out a poll and we'll figure out a date over the course of roughly the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks that we can all get together. And it also doesn't have to be between 5 and 7. We
Yeah, I
have,
was gonna say, it doesn't have to be a Wednesday either, right?
Right,
It could be a Tuesday.
exactly.
Right.
So what I'll do is we'll send that out and we'll lock in on a date for one more session. And I'll subsequently send out the presentation to you guys as well too. So you'll have that ahead of time. So we can come into that session ready to discuss presentation. You'll have seen it and be prepared to talk through it.
Sounds good.
Sound like a plan?
Yep, sounds like a good plan.
Very good. All right. This concludes our June 1st committee meeting.
I second that.
Who's got the gavel? Thank you,
Bye,
Brenda.
everybody. Bye,
Enjoy the
everybody.
beach.
You too. Thank you.
See ya. Thank you, guys.